All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us for today's CNRAC conversation. This is one in a series of these conversations that the Conservation and Natural Resource Advisory Council has put on during the last several years. We're grateful for you all joining us and for our speakers today. We have a great lineup of speakers on a topic that seems to always be relevant: sustaining a state park and forest system for a growing outdoor recreation economy. Since 1995, the Conservation and Natural Resource Advisory Council has drawn upon the diversity of experiences and perspectives of its appointed citizen members to provide the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, the governor, the General Assembly, and the public advice regarding the conservation and stewardship of the Commonwealth's natural resources. Today's topic is at the nexus of two important issues that CNRAC has followed for years. First, the need to continually invest in our state park and forest system with modernized and expanded facilities, and to continue to tackle the maintenance backlog that our public lands face in Pennsylvania. And second, the opportunity to leverage our world-class public lands as the fundamental infrastructure that supports a $19 billion outdoor recreation economy in Pennsylvania. Before we dive in with our speakers, I do want to give a quick self-serving plug for CNRAC's public meetings. These are held bi-monthly and are open to the public, either in person in Harrisburg and sometimes throughout the state, or virtually. And so you're always welcome to join us. Our next meeting is Wednesday, May 28th from 10 a.m. to noon. And in addition to agency updates from Secretary Dunn and her team, which we have at every meeting, this month's two presentations during our public meeting will focus on the economic impact of trails. So if that's a topic of interest to you, or if it's a topic you know nothing about, either way, it's a great time to tune in and just get a crash course in great work that's going on across Pennsylvania. CNRAC is always open to ideas regarding future topics, both for our public meetings and for our CNRAC conversations, as well as your feedback on issues and policies that are relevant to conservation and natural resources in Pennsylvania. So please never hesitate to reach out to myself, who serves as chair, or our other CNRAC members, some of whom are joining us for the call today. So with that, we'll get started. We have four speakers who will present their content, following which we'll save time for a Q&A session. Depending on the timing here, we may take a couple questions immediately following each presenter as well. We are using the Q&A function today, so please, if you have a question, use that function. We won't be unmuting and people won't be asking direct questions. If you're not aware of how to use that, you can go ahead and use the chat function as well. Ryan, our CNRAC administrator, and I will continue to monitor both for any of your questions or comments that we can share. So with that, I will turn it over to Marcy Mowry, who is president of the Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation and is our first presenter. Marcy.
Thank you, Silas. Wonderful to be here. I am going to share my slide program. So give me a minute. We're going to hope it all works out. Are we seeing it? Good. Okay. The Pennsylvania Parks and Forest Foundation, this is one of our favorite topics, is looking at the infrastructure and maintenance needs in Pennsylvania's state parks and state forests. In 2018, we did some research and put together a report, which can be found at protectourparksandforests.org. And we've been using that report to educate decision makers on the need to invest in state parks and state forests. And let's put it into perspective. DCNR owns a large volume of infrastructure, a large volume of land. In fact, the combined acreage of Pennsylvania state parks and state forests are twice the size of the entire state of Delaware. And this consists of a lot of different components: buildings, roads, trails, bridges, dams, sewage treatment plants, water systems that sometimes are treating not just the water and sewage of the park or the forest, but also of local communities. In addition to all that built infrastructure, there are the recreational facilities and amenities that require regular maintenance and upgrades, from the campsites to stables, from marinas to amphitheaters. All of this is part of that large infrastructure that makes up the amazing state park and state forest system that we have in Pennsylvania. When we initially released our report, the number for this maintenance and infrastructure was $1 billion. And that report was released in 2019. In 2022, we had hoped to do some things in 2020, which we all know what happened. But in 2022, when we looked at the numbers again, it had gone up to about 1.5 billion. It's now down to about 1.2 billion because some recent investments are making a difference. And we can look at that 1.2 billion and break it down into about 404 million. That's a backlog of projects. About 582 million of that is maintenance or projects in the pipeline, and about 171 million, which is new. And these projects range from bridges to updating sewage treatment plants that have been in existence for 50 years. But this number isn't stagnant. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, in part because it's not stagnant, because we've had some severe weather events in the Commonwealth of the past couple of years. And even right now, we've had days of rain and there are trails that are underwater. This picture here that I'm showing now is Little Pine State Park after the hurricane last year that received a lot of damage. So a severe weather event can change that bottom line number. Changes in safety standards happen on a regular basis. Your pool may be at regulation today, but a new safety standard comes out and there needs to be upgrades. There could be emergency repairs. It's, a busy weekend. It's a holiday weekend. A sewage treatment facility could go out and require an emergency repair. That number may or may not include desired improvements, such as placing ADA canoe and kayak launches or widening doors to accommodate wheelchairs. We don't know what the impact of the tariffs are going to be on that number. Will prices go up? Will that 1.2 rise to 1.4, back to 1.5? And some of the quotes are what I'll call outdated. And by that, I mean, those are quotes that were put into the system a few years ago. So prices have risen since that initial quote was put in there. So it could be higher. So that number does shift. And why is this important? Why are we having this conversation? To meet the needs of the public, we need to address the infrastructure and maintenance needs in our state parks and state forests. And not just the needs, but having adequate staffing so that those needs can be met. And the State Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan, which is about set to be released, did a lion poll and surveyed Pennsylvanians. And of those surveyed, about nearly 3/4 of Pennsylvanians reported participating in outdoor recreation in the last year. Of that those types of recreation, walking and running was the most frequent, followed by scenic driving, picnicking and barbecuing, and hiking and backpacking. So Pennsylvanians are utilizing these outdoor recreation spaces. And that's not limited to state parks and state forests. That could be community parks, that could be game lands, Fish and Boat Commission lands, but they are enjoying outdoor recreation. For those not participating, the barriers include health limitations, environmental hazards, and lack of companionship, not having somebody that they can go out into the outdoors with. About 7.2% of Pennsylvanians didn't participate in any outdoor recreation, and they tend to be older Pennsylvanians. And it's important to note that about 1/5 of Pennsylvania residents are 65 years or older, which brings into the conversation, how are we planning for a lifetime of access to outdoor recreation? How are we not only addressing those current infrastructure and maintenance needs, but how are we planning for an aging population? In addition, 14.6% of Pennsylvanians report having one or more disabilities. And in fact, the World Health Organization states that everybody during their lifetime will have some sort of disability. That could be you broke your leg, or you're having a challenging pregnancy, or you recently had surgery, so the way you recreate might change for a period of time. Having a disability may lead to other health issues such as obesity, heart disease, and diabetes. So how are we, again, looking at our built infrastructure and planning through universal design to accommodate all of Pennsylvanians? And universal design, what's good for one person is good for everybody. And you see here the graph showing the percentage of people with mobility impairments or challenges, cognitive challenges, hearing challenges, self-care, or vision challenges. And I think it's important to acknowledge this because Pennsylvanians, according to the SCORP survey, feel that access to the outdoors and outdoor recreation is a part of their overall healthcare and their overall wellness regime, both physical, mental, and emotional. So planning for everyone, what does that look like? Well, one of the largest barriers that people identify as well is transportation. How are we accommodating those who don't have or that have a lack of transportation to get them to a state park or a state forest? They might be able to get to a community park, but are they able to get to a state park or state forest? And some of those barriers can be addressed through funding for transportation. The foundation actually works with DCNR through the Education Improvement Tax Credit to help transport students to parks and forests, as well as we have in private philanthropy dollars to provide for seniors to getting to parks and forests for programs and community groups. But is there a way to work with transportation authorities to ensure that there is public transit that will move people to these places? How do we connect communities to their state parks and state forests? This could be through trail gaps, investing in trail building. It could be looking at other innovative ways to connect communities to parks and forests. Can we be looking at investing in parks near population centers? Yes, that may mean adding more parks, but if we bring parks to people, more people can benefit from the health benefits, and I'm sure Nathan will be talking about the economic benefits of these places in the landscape. I mentioned universal design, upgrading infrastructure to accommodate all. The picture here is of a canoe and kayak launch that was placed at Little Buffalo. One of the things that we found is that when these are put into place, everybody is using them because it's so much easier to get into and out of a canoe or kayak if the boat is stabilized. Again, universal design. At Pinchot State Park, we put in a Moby mat, which allows wheeled devices to move across the sand, and that's good for parents or grandparents with baby strollers. So think about it as how do we benefit everybody through our design principles? And also, how do we address people's concerns? The lack of companionship, lack of knowledge, fears, based on Lyme disease or snakes. How do we look at that? How do we address that? Part of the work that the foundation has been doing is advocating for support of investments in maintenance and infrastructure through supporting the annual budget, through supporting special investments. Last year, we were disappointed that the General Assembly did not pass the governor's proposed trail funding at $8.3 million per year. We're hopeful that the additional $5 million for trails and for the two new parks passes the governor's budget this year. We support new parks that protect unique assets, bring recreation closer to people, and provide a release valve for heavily used areas. I think that the current use of, people that are moving from Army Corps facilities that are not open this summer into state parks show that, people are seeking these places. So when we have an area that's heavily used, how do we provide a release valve? Identifying funding to upgrade infrastructure to universal design to accommodate an aging population. Is there a potential funding source that would help with this? And how do we explore potential partnership opportunities through volunteers, corporate partners, educational improvement tax credit, et cetera, to address some of the needs in state parks and state forests? And the picture that I'm showing here is one of our recent initiatives is to put motorized, accessible chairs in state parks and state forests that will allow those with the mobility devices to access trails, perhaps for the first time since in a long time. And this is a partnership that we're working on with Quantum, which is a Pennsylvania-based manufacturer. So I believe there are a lot of different ways that we can address infrastructure needs, but it takes a village. It takes all of us working together to be educated on the needs and to talk and have conversations with our elected officials. So I'm going to stop sharing, and that's my presentation. And I think we have Q&A at the end, so I will hold off.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Marcy. And that's a good reminder that if you do have questions for Marcy or future speakers, make sure you stick them in the Q&A tool so we can see them. I have a question for Marcy, but I'm going to be responsible and wait till the end. So for now, I will turn it over to our next speaker, Nathan Regner, who is director of the Pennsylvania Office of Outdoor Recreation and has really done some remarkable work on behalf of Pennsylvania's outdoor recreation economy in the last several years for the Commonwealth. Nathan.
Thank you, Silas. Thank you for having us here today. I'm looking forward to sharing some thoughts with you. There are three buckets of thoughts that I'd like to share, some of which are a little bit more factual and others of which may be on more of the musings end of things. But they're centered around this idea of sustaining our parks and forests for the future, and particularly to help Pennsylvania realize the benefits of our outdoor recreation economy. So, briefly, what is our outdoor recreation economy and how do we think about it? We think about our outdoor recreation economy being composed of three parts: the outdoor recreation industry, the contribution of outdoor recreation to broad-based community and economic development, and the cost savings that can be generated from both investment in outdoor recreation and participation in it. So our outdoor recreation industry in Pennsylvania, this is at least in 2023, a $19 billion industry. That represents 2% of Pennsylvania's gross domestic productivity, or 1 out of every $50 made by private industry in the Commonwealth, made through outdoor recreation. The outdoor recreation industry supports 168,000 jobs, and those jobs exclude proprietorships, business ownerships, and they exclude independent contractors. Two types of professional connection to the outdoor industry that we know are increasing with time. Pennsylvania's outdoor recreation industry is strong and growing fast. Between 2022 and 2023, our outdoor recreation industry experienced 10% growth. That's 4 times the growth rate of our economy as a whole. I like to ask who here would like their investments to grow at 10% annually. I think every hand should be up. And over the previous 10 years, our outdoor recreation industry has grown at a 5% compounded annual rate. So outdoor recreation in Pennsylvania, pre-pandemic, during pandemic, post-pandemic, is a strong and growing industry. Our outdoor recreation industry is made up of 3 broad types of businesses. One are producers. These are our designers, manufacturers, distributors, retailers, and repairers of vehicles, equipment, clothing, nutrition, gear. The adaptive mobility device that Marcy referenced is a great example. They're a great example of a producer of outdoor recreation products in the Commonwealth. We have our providers. Our providers provide outdoor recreation experiences and include campgrounds and ski areas, mountain lodges and fishing camps, guides, outfitters, rental shops, transportation services, events, all of our mountain bike races and ultra marathons, hot air balloon tournaments, bass fishing tournaments. These are all examples of providers of outdoor recreation, as well as the hospitality businesses, food, beverage, and lodging, serving outdoor recreationists and located in outdoor recreation areas. If we have our providers and our producers, there's also a set of professionals working in outdoor recreation. Our professionals include planners and designers and builders of outdoor infrastructure, creatives, technical professionals, digital content creators, map makers, web developers, as well as accountants, consultants, attorneys, healthcare professionals, community capacity builders working in this space. So the first component of our outdoor economy is our outdoor recreation industry. Second is the contribution of outdoor recreation to broad-based community and economic development. And this largely functions through quality of life in our communities and the role that high quality of life that is driven by access to well-developed outdoor recreation, the role that that plays in youth retention, student retention, workforce recruitment, business recruitment, entrepreneurial stimulation, etc. So both of these components of our outdoor economy generate value for the Commonwealth. They make money for us, make money for our outdoor recreation businesses, and make money for the Commonwealth in general. In addition to those two value-generating components, there is the cost savings associated with outdoor recreation infrastructure. The cost savings of green infrastructure over gray infrastructure for stormwater management, temperature regulation, air and water purification, as well as the cost savings of the healthy lifestyles that come along with participation in outdoor recreations, our savings on physical, mental, public health. So this is the outdoor economy that we are trying to lift up, and we know that our parks and our forests are absolutely critical for this. In the Office of Outdoor Recreation, we talk about that in two ways. One is the tree of outdoor recreation. The tree of outdoor, we can think of outdoor recreation as a tree that bears us fruit. Some of that fruit I was just talking about, economic fruit, health fruit, community connection, environmental conservation fruit. I saw Silas laugh a little bit because he's waiting for my punchline, which is it bears us so many different kinds of fruit. It's like a fruit salad tree. But thank you, like any orchard, in order to get that fruit full and healthy, we have to have fertile soil and we have to take care of this tree. We need to defend it from pests. We need to help it grow strong. And at some points, we may even need to do some strategic pruning of that tree. And our parks and our forests here in Pennsylvania are that fertile soil and the trunk of the tree from which all of these benefits grow. That's one reason why we need to think about sustaining our parks and forests to deliver the economic benefits of our outdoor economy. Our parks and forests are also the bones, the skeleton that our body of outdoor recreation is built upon. They're the absolute foundation that allows all of these benefits to flow. So that's the setup. That's what our outdoor economy is, and that's the role of parks and forests play in growing our outdoor economy. Now, in the guidance or in the write-up for this, there was talk about growing demand, about new demand, about safety, about accessibility in outdoor recreation in Pennsylvania. And here's where we're on a bit of the musings part of things, or the the thoughts from the office about what are some of these new demands and how do they connect to the sustainability, the maintenance, the development of our parks and forests. Well, one of these new demands is land use. We see land use changes across the Commonwealth. We see regions of the Commonwealth closer to our population centers being developed rapidly. In other regions of the Commonwealth, we know that our populations are shifting from our more rural counties to our more urban counties and elsewhere. And so as these land use and population distribution shifts occur, it's important for us to be thinking about the implications of that for our parks and forests. Both like Marcy alluded to, ensuring that park and forest resources are available near where people live, and ensuring that we can leverage our park and forest resources in other areas of the Commonwealth to help counterbalance some of these population shifts. We also see trends in participation, along with generally increasing outdoor recreation participation over time. There are some changes that are occurring. One is related to accessibility and the inclusive welcoming of our outdoor lands. Historically, the band within our population who participated in outdoor recreation was somewhat narrow and of a type. And we see more and more interest from more and more different types of Pennsylvanians and visitors in participating in outdoor recreation. And we need to do things from infrastructure developments like universally accessible infrastructure, boat launches, trails, facilities, to the stand-up of information resources, programming that helps our parks and forests be places that are welcoming and useful to all Pennsylvanians of every physical, cognitive, and identity characteristic that's out there. Another relatively new, at least new in terms of the history of conservation, connection between outdoor recreation and parks and forests. We're seeing an increasing connection between athleticism and park and forest use. More and more Pennsylvanians are seeking their exercise and competition in our parks and forests, whether that be with the emergence of more athletic pursuits like trail running and mountain biking, open water swimming, or the popularity of competitive events, races, runs, challenges, things like this, coming to our public lands. These are new types of uses and a bit of a different mindset than some of the drivers or motivations that sort of underpin the foundation of our park and forest lands. We also have seen since the pandemic a marked increase in people combining their work and recreational lives together. One way we see this play out is the relocation of professionals to amenity-rich communities that are often proximate to our park and forest lands, so that they can work remotely and then enjoy all of the benefits of daily outdoor recreation in their lives. We also see more and more people taking working vacations, if you will, camping out in a state park for a week, putting in their 6 hours of remote work at the picnic table, and then enjoying the rest of the time with their friends, their family, and themselves. And this leads to different demands and different needs for infrastructure within our parks. We're also seeing among among recreationists and visitors to our parks, primarily tourists, an interest in productizing our outdoor recreation, in pulling together guides and outfitters, hospitality services, alternative itineraries into a package of experiences that are ready made for visitors who don't know Pennsylvania or new recreationists who don't have that depth of skill from a lifetime. In addition to these broad changes in kind of the recreation demand, there are some specific technological changes out there that we're seeing that have implications for park and forest infrastructure. The rise of demand for full service hookups within our campgrounds is a story well known to many of us and a trend that has been afoot for a while. We can combine that with electrification. As vehicles, as ATVs, as bicycles are increasingly electrified, the need for charging and incorporating that electrification component into our facility designs and planning is only going to grow. Pennsylvania has long been a leader in the rail trail movement or the building of surfaced and engineered multi-use paths. We're getting darn close to having a statewide network. And as that trail network grows, our natural surface trails, our dirt paths in the woods, whether they be legacy trails like the AT, the Mid-State Trail, our state forest hiking trail system, or whether they be newer multi-use trails like those that are built at the trails of Jake's Rocks and Allegheny National Forest, being built in Rothrock State Forest in partnership with the Rothrock Trails Alliance right now. We see greater demand for emphasis on our natural surface trails, both maintaining what is out there and building new trails that cater to the needs of today's recreationists. Two more items that I'll put here on the table in terms of infrastructure. Rock climbing, when I came into this work, I thought, man, we're Pennsylvania. We don't really have a rock climbing community here. And I have been astounded by the breadth and depth of interest in climbing here in Pennsylvania. And I think there's a lot of opportunities as we move into the future to develop those experiences and resources on our lands, and even going so far as to think of climbing routes as vertical trails here in Pennsylvania. And the final point I'll put on the table in terms of infrastructure sustainability for our parks and forests is water access. It is getting hot in Pennsylvania in the summertime, and people want access to water. Anecdotally, within the agency, we have observed that many places, many water access points that were once developed primarily for paddling or for fishing are now being used as full-blown day use areas. People want to be near the water, people want to be in the water, and many of our water access points have not been developed with the facilities necessary to accommodate that day use: toilets, trash, picnic tables, shade structures, these kinds of things. We also know that in many of our lands, the opportunity to fully immerse in the water is often quite limited, and we're looking for ways to expand that water access as well. So we got the outdoor economy. What is it? We've got the foundational importance of our parks and forests as the fertile soil and the skeleton of our outdoor economy, and a whole series of ways in which the interest in outdoor recreation continues to evolve and expand, and some thoughts on how we all can work together to prepare our parks and forests to satisfy that demand and unite, grow, and strengthen our outdoor economy.
All right. Mission accomplished, Nathan. You fit a lot of good information and also a couple thought pieces in there as well. And if talking about climbing routes as vertical trails doesn't get at least one Q&A, I'm getting upset with this audience, because that's an interesting concept.
It's just a different rise over run ratio.
There you go. Yes, just slightly. Thanks, Nathan. Our next presenter, Michael Twigg, is Division Chief for the Division of Environmental Engineering and Architecture in the Bureau of Facility Design and Construction at DCNR. I'll turn it over to Michael.
All right, thank you. As my presentation is coming up here, I'll say good afternoon to everybody, and how excited I am to be here with Chris this afternoon to talk about the Visitor Center and Park Office at Hickory Run State Park. I'm going to start with just a quick look at Hickory Run State Park. It's located in the northeast part of the state in Carbon County, in the western foothills of the Pocono Mountains. The park has nearly 16,000 acres and contains more than 40 miles of hiking trails. It's home to a natural feature called the Boulder Field, which is a national natural landmark. It has numerous waterfalls, a lake with swimming beach, trout streams, several campgrounds, and organized group camping facilities. But what the park didn't have, and what it lacked, was an office facility or visitor facility that was really appropriate to a park of this size, and with the recreational opportunities that the park provided and the level of visitation that the park saw. The previous office was actually in a more than 100-year-old converted residence. It lacked public toilets, educational space. It lacked space for the environmental education staff and their storage of their materials. It lacked space for the park rangers. It didn't have sufficient public and employee parking, and it didn't have accessible routes or an accessible entrance. It didn't work well as a campground contact station because, well, it didn't have camper parking, and it didn't have very safe access off the main park road. So DCNR began a planning effort that looked at the staffing and visitor public service needs at the park, and evaluated some alternate locations that had safer access and were more accessible to visitors. The efficiency of combining multiple functions into a single facility was something that was considered. There was a desire, of course, to serve more visitors and expand the educational capabilities at the park, and how to make better connections to other park resources and keep people connected to the natural environment was also an element of the project planning. The new site that was selected was a little more than a mile down the road at the entrance to the family campground, and not only did this provide a safer access to and from the main park road, but it also placed the new visitor center and office closer to many of the park's main recreational offerings. The design of the facility included the park administrative space, of course, and also the ability to serve as a contact station for the campground. It was to include exhibit and classroom space, offices for the environmental education staff and the park rangers, and also provide expanded and fully accessible public toilets. The site design included expanded public parking to include camper, RV, and bus parking. And then it also realigned the campground entrance road a little bit for better traffic flow. And as I said, an overall goal was to better orient the park visitor to the many natural and recreational resources at the park and the surrounding area. Sustainability was a key goal of the design and construction, and the project was awarded LEED Silver certification from the U.S. Green Building Council. And some of the sustainable features of the building include native plantings, rain gardens that manage the stormwater on site, shielded dark sky compliant exterior lighting, high performance building envelope combined with a geothermal heating and cooling system. There's user demand lighting and plumbing controls, low flow plumbing fixtures, low or no VOC materials to improve the indoor air quality, and materials with higher levels of recycled content. The project broke ground for construction October 23rd of 2018, and interesting enough, almost exactly 2 years later, the ribbon was cut that opened the new visitor center and park office at Hickory Run State Park. So the next series of slides takes you on a brief visual tour of the facility. And we're going to start here at the new entrance road off the main park road, and the campground entrance goes off to the left. We're going to continue around to the right where you can start to see the new facility. Excuse me. We continue to approach along the entrance drive and can look off to the left. There's 2 large rain gardens that manage most of the site's stormwater. Continuing up the drive, we arrive at the front of the new visitor center and office. There's accessible drop-off, there's accessible parking, there's curb ramps, there's accessible routes, and there's an at-grade entrance to the building. The entrance plaza in front of the building features a map of the park area that helps orient visitors from the moment that they arrive. There's ample bike racks to encourage non-motorized movement around the park, as well as accessible drinking fountain, trash and recycling container. There's also educational elements that talk about some of the environmental and recreational features of the site and the park, and Chris will talk some more about those educational elements a little bit later in the tour. At the building entrance is the self-serve campground check-in under a covered porch, provides shelter from the weather. There's also a small gathering place with a fireplace, and this is the kind of place that can serve as a rallying or gathering point for your family or groups, or it can be used by the park for small educational programs. When you enter the lobby, you're first presented with a wall of windows that looks out on a small meadow and wooded area. And the intent of this is to keep the visitor connected to the resource, to the park, and keep them connected to the natural environment, even when they're inside the building. The lobby also features wood timbers and paneling that was salvaged from a park storage building that was demolished as part of the project. The timbers were reconfigured and reassembled to fit the new space, and the siding and roofing planks were cleaned and remilled and serve as paneling and trim in the lobby. Going behind the reception counter, we can take a quick look at the administrative areas. You'll see the general park offices, you'll see environmental education staff offices and ranger offices. There's also conference room, environmental education storage, lunchroom, and ranger locker room. Head back to the lobby, and you can see the set of double doors opposite the reception desk that leads to the main exhibit space. Now, this is what the space looked like when it was empty. It's a large vaulted space with clear story windows that provide natural light, and there's a glazed alcove that looks out again and connects the people and the visitor to the outdoors. And Chris has some slides that will show what the space looks like after being filled by the exhibits. But first, I'm going to head back to the lobby and off to the side of the entrance vestibule where you'll find the new fully accessible public toilet rooms. And it also includes a separate family-assisted toilet room, excuse me, for parents with children or anyone that needs additional assistance. And we continue down the hallway and we come to the main classroom space in the building. This is a flexible use space. It includes movable tables and chairs, AV equipment, and plenty of environmental education supply storage. And the set of double doors in the back of this room connects to an outdoor education pavilion. And this gives the environmental education staff the ability to offer various types of programming, both interior to the building as well as outside in the environment. And then the pavilion is also connected down to the park's outdoor amphitheater and to, and to the park's larger trail network with a new wide accessible trail with low bollard lighting for safe nighttime use. So this adds the ability to offer both daytime and nighttime programming. And then this trail connects back to the main parking area, which further expands the park's ability to offer educational programming by connecting accessible parking to the outdoor amphitheater. And then that brings us back to the front of the building where I'm going to hand the tour over to Chris to talk more about the educational components.
All right. Thank you, Mike. So when we were thinking about the building and the exhibits and education, we were really thinking about kind of two things. We were thinking about what we needed as state parks within the visitor center, and we were also thinking about the visitor experience and what we wanted them to get from that experience. So as Mike said, we have interpretation outside because we really wanted to set the scene for what folks were going to be able to experience, not just within the exhibits, but also within the park. The other thing that we really were really mindful of when we were thinking about the exhibits is that we recognize that Hickory Run is not just the point of contact for Hickory Run State Park, but oftentimes it's utilized as that point of contact for Lehigh Gorge State Park. So we really tried to kind of combine both of those parks and the needs of the visitor for what they may need to know about both of those parks when we were thinking about the, particularly about the exhibits in particular. So when you walk into that exhibit space, you're really hit with like this wall of exhibits. I'm 6'1", and these exhibits for the most part are taller than I am. And one of the reasons for that is because one of the driving goals is that we really wanted to create a sense of awe in the visitor in terms of the just like the awesomeness that is Hickory Run State Park and of nature and the things that they can be experiencing at the park, right? We wanted to build an awareness in them of the outdoors, and we wanted to model safe, respectful behavior. But at the same time, we wanted them to really get excited about what the park has to offer and hopefully to build their confidence to go out and explore the park beyond just those kind of typical areas that people usually think of, like go beyond Boulder Field, right? So that's what we were really aiming to do. And so as you kind of walk around and you get into that exhibit space, each of these kind of 5 pods, as we called them internally, really kind of delved into a specific area of the park. And we, our design team and us, we really leaned into the idea of universal design, as Marcy had mentioned earlier, to make sure that everybody could participate and utilize these exhibits. But at the same time, though, what we really wanted folks to get out of was that we wanted them to feel confident and to go out and explore the park and to use it recreationally. But we wanted them to be able to do it safe, and we wanted them to be able to do it properly, right, to minimize their negative impacts. So throughout the exhibits, you'll see these kind of 8 main icons, and they're really meant to illustrate the most popular recreations that take place at Hickory Run and to kind of show people where you can do those particular recreations at within the park. At the same time, we really wanted to focus on leave no trace principles. We had quite a few objectives. I think we had like 8 objectives for what we wanted folks to get out of this particular experience. And a few of them were very much to minimize graffiti and vandalism and those negative impacts that the park would regularly see. But at the same time, we really wanted to boost user confidence, and we wanted them to be able to learn about leave no trace principles. So one of the ways that we did that was through what we called these stewardship posters. But again, you know, there was a lot happening within the park. There was a lot of green infrastructure built into the building. So we wanted to highlight that and provide a take-home message for our visitors for not only what they can do at home, but also ways that they can be more sustainable even while they're at the park. And then as we really thought about how it may impact our actual programming, you know, for when folks come and chat with a state park educator, one of the great things about having this classroom is that we now have an indoor classroom space, right? We are able to welcome a diversity of audiences, and we are able to accommodate their needs much more easily by having this indoor classroom space. We're now able to program in inclement weather. We're able to program year-round, and it really has expanded not only when and what we're able to program about, but also who we're able to welcome into our programs. And the programming patio has been, there have been a few surprises, I feel like, from this. And one of the things that the park regularly does is that they hold pop-ups or impromptu programs at the patio, because this path here has become a bit of a walking highway for the park. It connects the campground, which if it's full can have upwards of 1,000 people at it on any given weekend. It connects that accessible parking lot, so you can have day users coming in there, and they're walking along this path to either get to the main day use area where the lake is, or to access some other hiking trails. So we're finding that by doing these kind of impromptu programs at the patio, we're reaching a much broader audience, right? We're reaching campers that perhaps would not have come to a formal program. We're reaching a lot more day use visitors that are just coming in for the day because they're moving along this path that was created and is helping them connect to other areas of the park, which was one of the major goals for moving the visitor center in the first place. And then when we were really thinking about that connection, there's a short 2 to 3 minute walk to the amphitheater. As Mike mentioned, that trail is flat, it's lit, it's pretty firm. It's not officially an ADA trail, but it has certainly increased the accessibility to the amphitheater from what we had before. But at the same time, though, because of that connection to the visitor center and the parking lot, it now is more welcoming, not just to our campers, but to our local visitors or those folks who are staying elsewhere and they can still come in and attend a program at the campground. So overall, we found that with what we did, we really wanted to, we found really kind of two main things, that the new visitor center really allows us to reach a more diverse audience and to be more accessible and accommodating to our audience, while at the same time, those exhibits help educate the visitor on how best to respectfully and safely recreate at the park while minimizing those negative interactions while promoting Leave No Trace principles. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris and Michael. And as you saw in the chat, a lot of fans of the new facility. I know I got a couple texts during it encouraging me to go up and check it out. It's been a few years since I've been to Hickory Run, and that looks amazing. So congratulations. Just a reminder, we have about 10 minutes left. So if you have questions, stick them in the Q&A. I'm going to start by going back to mine for Marcy. And I'm just curious how, if you know, how does Pennsylvania's sort of approach to our investment in public lands compare to some of our surrounding states? In particular, you showed the numbers on our maintenance backlog, how we have made some significant progress in addressing it, but there's a lot of work to go. Is that typically where most states are at right now, or are there states that approach their funding of that work differently?
Ironically, we were just talking about that yesterday. There's the National Association of State Park Foundations, and we were comparing numbers. And while our numbers vary, we're all struggling with the same problem, is really trying to advocate for investment, and investments are coming in. But like your home to-do list, that list never goes away. There's always going to be projects that need to happen. So, I think that we've been lucky in Pennsylvania. We've had 2 investments over the past few years, the ARPA funds, and then Governor Shapiro invested some funds, but we know that there's more work to be done. And I think many of the other states are in the same situation.
Great, thank you.
Silas,
Michael, oh, sure, go ahead.
May I
please.
chime in on that as well a little
Go
bit?
for it. Yep.
And so this takes us to, at least at the national level, another framework for thinking about this that it may be useful. And I'm going to put a link in the chat for everybody. Outdoor Recreation Roundtable did an analysis, and this analysis was done in 2023. 2.2% of our gross domestic product in the United States, U.S. overall, is associated with outdoor recreation industry. 0.16% of the federal budget goes directly towards supporting outdoor recreation and federal lands. That's at the national level. And so, we see within that a very high impact to cost ratio for the contribution of outdoor recreation to our national economy, versus percentage of the federal budget. And this is an analysis that the Office of Outdoor Recreation is working on here in Pennsylvania as well, so we can illustrate, the return on these kinds of investments, the kinds of investments that Pennsylvania Parks and Forests Foundation has been quantifying for us.
Yep, that's a great point, and it's just a reminder that we have not yet started thinking about our outdoor recreation infrastructure in the way we do infrastructure for other really critically important economic sectors. But we're getting there, and those numbers are helping us to do that. Um, Chris and Michael, I'm just curious, how do you anticipate when you're doing a project like this, or maybe even looking more broadly at, what projects you choose to undertake and the nature of the projects, how do you anticipate visitor needs? And, especially in a world where those visitor needs seem to be evolving over time, and incorporate those in, and maybe Hickory Run's a good example of that, or maybe there's other projects.
I don't know, Chris, if you want to chime in on that. A lot of that information comes from the on ground staff, the park managers, the forest district managers. They interact with the public over time. They see the changing trends. So a lot of the planning and scoping of the projects that we do involves a lot of conversations with them. We have a couple newer parks that are being developed, and state parks work through a master planning process with that, which involved some partner interactions to help form or frame what those activities and those resources would be developed in those parks.
Yeah, I pretty much am going to echo what Mike said about it. It very much depends on project and the level of planning involved. But I know for Hickory Run, it was very much, we had 3 decades worth of visitor contact to really get a sense of what was working and not working, and what was needed from that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And for what it's worth, we've just been down here in York County, appreciative of the process around Susquehanna Riverland State Park. And in that case, you have, no visitor engagement prior to the establishment of the park, but the ability to go out and talk to local communities and the future users of that park to get some of their input. And that's been a great process so far. Nathan, you got a question. Well, I say Nathan, but anybody else can jump in as well. You got a question about climbing, and Jeff Simcoe, thank you for being on with us. He asks, how is PA managing the interest in additional developed climbing areas and/or the management of existing climbing areas? I know that you shared these conversations have been ongoing, but you're still sort of on the front end of some of those. Anything to offer on initial thoughts on how DCNR is approaching that?
Yep, absolutely. We're approaching it along 4 tracks. We're approaching it along 3 tracks, and our climbing community is approaching it as well. So first and foremost, our climbing community here in Pennsylvania is organized through 4 local climbing organizations. And local climbing organizations, LCOs, are climbing clubs. They receive support at the national level from the American Alpine Association and the Access Fund. And our local climbing organizations have been, over the past several years, really doing a lot of great organizing and collaboration around the Commonwealth. An illustration of this is that just 2 or 3 weeks ago, an event was held, Pennsylvania's very first climbing advocacy summit, that brought about 50 leaders from the climbing community together with agency folks and other advocates in Huntingdon to discuss the state of climbing, the state of climbing policy, and how climbers can better support and advocate for their support moving forward. So that first ever summit and convening was a real big step for them. Those groups, both collectively at the state level and within the 4 regional LCOs, are also working hard to develop stronger relationships with agencies. One is through a direct relationship between the Pennsylvania Game Commission and Southwest Pennsylvania Climbers Coalition, SWEPAC, the LCO in Southwest PA, and another is through the Climbing Action Team, which is a collaborative effort between the climbing community and us and DCNR. To get together to talk about issues and develop joint initiatives. A couple of the outgrowths of that climbing action team have included revisions within our climbing policy and information here at DCNR, and a new climbing policy or an improved climbing policy is in the latter phases of development right now, and we'll be excited to share that with CNRAC once it is prepared. Also, as new park assets and new forest assets come online, we're specifically partnering with climbers. I know there's been a very strong partnership around planning for climbing to be an included use at Susquehanna Riverlands State Park. I understand that there is a burgeoning partnership around the Lehigh Gorge, with new additions to that state park on the horizon. And interestingly, in Forbes State Forest in Southwest Pennsylvania, recently took the step of being the first location within our state forest land of having designated and approved climbing routes, in which there's a partnership with, again, Southwest Pennsylvania Climbers Coalition for stewardship and maintenance of that climbing route. In addition to those kinds of partnerships, we in the Office of Outdoor Recreation are looking to build relationships with our climbing businesses, whether they be producers of climbing equipment like Organic Climbing, our rock climbing guides that operate throughout the Commonwealth, and even our climbing gyms, our indoor facilities, which we know are feeders into our outdoor recreation system. So we got our climbers organizing, we got the climbing action team, and revised policy. We've got new climbing opportunities on state park and state forest lands, and we've got connection to climbing businesses, all of which incorporate ecological sensitivities, whether they be to bats or salamanders or rats or cliffside vegetation.
All right. Thank you, Nathan. Great question and a good answer. And I think we're running up against time, so we're going to make that the last response. And I'm going to thank Marcy and Chris and Michael and Nathan for being on with us today as speakers, for everything that they do for the Commonwealth. I'm going to thank all of our participants today for being on with us and listening in. And just a final reminder to please continue to reach out to CNRAC, follow along with what we do. And I see the note from Marcy that Eastern PA Alliance of Climbers, an awesome group, just received an award from the foundation. So congrats to them. Thanks everybody for being on. I hope you have a great rest of the day.